Hello and welcome back to Mac at the Movies. Today I'm bringing you another weekly movie review with the film Firestarter, released May 13th, 2022 by Blumhouse Productions. This film was directed by Keith Thomas, who had also directed The Vigil. This film stars Zac Efron as Andy McGee, Ryan Cara Armstrong as Charlie McGee, Sidney Lemon as Vicky McGee, Michael Greyes as Rainbird, Gloria Rubin as Captain Hollister, Kurtwood Smith as Dr. Wanless, and John Beasley as Irv Manders. This film follows a family as they have a newborn. The movie starts out with the mother and the baby. Father comes in. They put the baby down for a nap, and they leave the room. And that's when the father realizes something's a bit off, goes back into the room and notices a fire. It becomes very present that the child is able to create fire with her mind, and the film then goes on into the introduction where we find out that the parents, Vicky and Andy, were college students that took on an experiment with a experimental serum of some sort that altered them in a sense that they were able to do things with their mind, either control people's thoughts or telepathy. I think that's what I'm trying to think of, where you're able to move things with your mind. And because of that, it passed down to their child. Truck drove by. I live in the South, so a lot of people like to drive very loud vehicles. So on occasion they drive by. Anywho, it passed the genetics, essentially. It altered their genetics and they passed it down to their daughter, who was then able to create fire with her mind during emotional outbursts, things like that. The agency who took over the project where they had administered the serums, I guess we're looking for some of the people who had that serum administered to them, and they were trying to collect them. The usual let's weaponize them type deal is more or less what you gather from this film. And they found some signal that went off the charts, the heat signal, and that's when they realized there's something a bit more to this, and that there is this girl. This is when Rainbird comes into play. He's an assassin that the agency, he was one of the original people who had the test trials worked on before it went to college kids for less than the minimum wage. But the father and the daughter end up on the run after this incident, and the mother is to follow. Well, that's when Rainbird comes in. He gets hired on to essentially get this girl by any means necessary. I don't want to spoil anything along the way. The father and the daughter end up on the run. They end up running into John Beasley's character, Irv, and they sort of trick him into going along the way, and so he gives them a ride. They continue on from there. There's an incident with a cat that I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan of bad things happening to animals in any movie, and in this one it is just kind of like, oof, man, poor cat. I mean, I get it, but boy, it definitely added some emotion to that scene. But it's around this part of the film that I feel it should have been a little longer. They should have started expanding. It's almost like they got, once the father and the daughter go on the run, it's like the movie speeds up along with the action. but they sort of skip over some things that probably should have been followed along the way. And I'm sure it's time. They're trying to pack as much in as they can. The longer films, I'm sure, have a much larger budget, and they just sort of kind of churn through the story a little bit. And I think they really could have expanded on certain things during this part of the film. And then, of course, I don't want to spoil the rest for you. The agency gets involved. They wind up in the midst of the agency, and they're trying to escape. Primarily, the father's trying to get the daughter to escape to safety. Whatever happens to him, he's supposed to be the dad. Let him handle whatever that is, and let her escape to freedom and just get out of there. All in all, I thought this was a good movie. Again, some areas I thought could have been improved was definitely the length of the story. I think they could have really expanded on certain parts of it, and the film could have easily been a half hour longer. But I completely understand where I'm sure they cut cost along the way. And this is not a movie I want to compare to the original, like I did with Carrie, when my friend Chase and I did Carrie. I don't want to focus on the original, just the remake, just focusing on this movie, and no comparisons. I know with remakes, a lot of people make comparisons to the original, and why did they have to go ruin everything? But standalone, this was a pretty good movie. I thought Zac Efron's character as a father was a bit lacking. It almost didn't feel like the experience was there to portray that on film, and it kind of showed. When I was talking with my friend Chase about this movie afterward, that was one thing he really, he's a dad, so that was definitely something he really noticed. Looking back at the movie, that is definitely something that's very present. Zac Efron, good actor in the films I've seen him in, but I don't think portraying a father is in his wheelhouse yet. I think being a father, I don't think he's a dad, not yet anyway, but I think there's that sense of urgency and vulnerability that you're going to have to try and protect your children, and it just didn't really seem that way. Then again, it seemed very structured, and he was trying to shelter her in ways that wouldn't harm her, but in a sense help her lead a more normal life. And so I think his acting was more structured toward that, but that it just didn't feel genuine. The film did have a very 80s vibe. Not so much, because it was based in modern time, so not so much an 80s vibe in the sense that it was set in the 80s. It definitely, what I did like is the house that they lived in definitely had a lived-in feel. It wasn't just your plain, let's Pier 1 import this house together. It was very much, it looked like it had been put together over the years, and that showed, which is something I feel like kind of gave it a bit of that 80s vibe that you get into it. I know some folks had mentioned that this sort of has a bit of a Stranger Things vibe to it, especially when they get into this facility compound. I didn't think so personally, but to each his own when it comes to what they thought this was like. I didn't get a real Stranger Things vibe. I would say the closest thing to that I felt was a scene where 3 kids approach her on bicycles, and it was like 2 minutes that sort of felt Stranger Things-ish. Probably more, was it summer of 87? Summer of 89? 86? I can't remember that correct name, the title of that film, but it sort of felt a bit like that film during that scene. more than Stranger Things, but that and the lighting in the film, it seemed a little too dark for a good majority of the film. Some parts I think warranted it, but other parts I'm just kind of like, eh. That and I felt a little odd during the film when they're at Irv's house. Irv, his wife, there was a car accident that had happened years prior, and so his wife stays at home, hooked up to machines to help keep her alive and just sustain living. And it's almost like he just sort of keeps her in a closed off dark room away from everything else to kind of like hide mistakes in his past, which I don't know, it was a little awkward, that scene. Again, I think it could have been expanded on. I think that character could have been developed a little bit more, especially with everything that goes on or that happened with he and his family, how he got to where he was in the film, in that story. And then you get this odd exchange between the child Charlie and him that just kind of seems, it's like they packed what should have been 10-15 minute worth of screen time into a minute and a half, maybe, if that. So all in all, I have to give this film just a run-of-the-mill 3 stars. I thought it was good. I will revisit it, but I didn't think it was the best movie in the world. It's definitely one that I think could have used a little bit more work. I thought the child's acting was great. I'm not usually a huge fan of younger child actors because it just doesn't seem so natural with some of their acting, but it seemed like it worked. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good film. I definitely say check it out. I watched it on Peacock. I know it's at the theaters. Either which way you view it, I definitely say check it out. And if you've seen it, jot down in the comments below what you thought of the movie. And if you like the review, smash that thumbs up, all that fun stuff. Subscribe, notification bell to let you know when I have new exciting videos coming your way. So thank you for stopping by. As always, be good to one another, and I'll see you next time. Bye.